Ladies and gentlemen, listen to me and listen good. A woman who walks with God doesn't have to chase anybody's approval. She doesn't have to shrink herself to make other people comfortable. She doesn't have to water down her truth or beg for the respect that was already written into her DNA by her creator. You see, when you know who you are, you walk a little taller. Your head stays high, not out of arrogance, but out of understanding. Understanding that God didn't put you here to be overlooked, mistreated, or dismissed. People will try to test you. They will try to put you in a box, tell you what you can't be, or what you can't be. But you, woman of faith, you are not here to meet their expectations. You're here to walk in your purpose. You're here to shine a light that can't be dimmed by other people's opinions. That light comes from God himself. So you don't lower your standards to fit into places you were never meant to be. You don't apologize for the fire in your soul or the power in your spirit. Respect isn't something you have to run after. It's something that flows naturally when you stand firm in your faith. When you live by God's truth, your character speaks louder than any words ever could. Your presence commands attention because it's rooted in something unshakable. You don't need to beg for respect when your life is a testimony of divine purpose. Walk with a quiet confidence, a strength that can't be manufactured because it comes from above. And let me tell you this, when you walk with God, you will lose some people. You will lose the ones who only love the version of you that didn't know her worth. Let them go. Don't chase them, because the right people, the people who see you, who honor you, who value you, will never ask you to beg for respect. They will stand beside you as you walk boldly in the calling God placed on your life. So hold your head up. Keep your faith strong. And remember this, a woman who walks with God never has to convince anyone of her value. Her life does the talking. Her faith does the proving. And her spirit sets the standard. A woman anchored in God knows her worth and never has to prove it to anyone because her identity does not rest on the shaky ground of other people's opinions. She understands deep in her heart that her value was decided long before she ever had to interact with this world. Long before she encountered rejection, betrayal, or moments of feeling unseen. Her worth was sealed by the one who created her, who breathed life into her spirit, who knew every hair on her head and every dream tucked inside her soul. She walks through life with a quiet certainty that no human approval can add a single ounce to her value and no human rejection can take anything away. She doesn't hustle for validation because she already carries the mark of divine approval. This kind of woman shows up differently in every room she enters. She is not desperate for a seat at anyone's table because she knows she belongs wherever God has assigned her. She does not diminish her light to make others comfortable, nor does she inflate her importance to impress anyone. Her confidence is authentic because it is rooted in something eternal. She can withstand criticism without falling apart, and she can handle praise without becoming prideful because she knows neither defines her. She is defined by her relationship with her creator, and that is more than enough. People will often misinterpret this kind of self-assurance. They may call her arrogant or accuse her of being unapproachable, but in reality, she is simply unwilling to trade her peace for other people's fleeting approval. She has learned that when you know who you are, you don't have to explain it to everyone. You don't have to argue with people who are committed to misunderstand you. You don't have to convince anyone to respect you because you already respect yourself. When life tries to pull her in 1,000 directions, when the voices around her get loud with opinions and expectations, she returns to the stillness of God's presence. In that place, she remembers the truth. She remembers that she is loved beyond measure, chosen without condition, and worthy without exception. She does not measure her beauty by the standards of a world that profits from her insecurity. She does not gauge her success by someone else's highlight reel. She does not look for her reflection in the distorted mirrors of comparison. She simply grounds herself in the unchanging truth that she is wonderfully made. This knowledge does not make her complacent. It makes her courageous. Because she is anchored in God, she is willing to take risks, to step into unknown territory, to obey a calling that doesn't always make sense to others. She does not wait for a chorus of applause before she moves. She does not ask for permission to grow. She does not apologize for pursuing the dreams God has placed in her heart. She understands that her purpose is bigger than her comfort zone and that she was created to live fully, not to shrink back in fear of judgment. She is gentle but not weak. She is humble but not self-deprecating. She is kind but not easily manipulated. She draws boundaries without guilt and says no without over-explaining. Her strength does not come from her own willpower, but from the spirit that empowers her every day. Because of this, she can stand firm in seasons of loneliness, knowing that God is with her even when people walk away. She can keep her heart soft in a world that tries to harden it because she trusts that God will vindicate her when she is misunderstood. When people see her unwavering peace, they may wonder how she does it. They may not understand how she can remain so rooted when circumstances shift and storms come. But she knows the secret. She is anchored to something deeper than her feelings. She is anchored to a hope that does not disappoint. She has spent countless quiet moments in prayer, in worship, and surrender, letting God shape her understanding of herself. So when the waves come, she does not drift into panic or desperation. She remains steady, her worth unshaken, her identity intact. This inner security frees her to love others without needing them to complete her. She can encourage without needing applause. She can serve without expecting recognition. She can give without fear of lack because she trusts that God will always replenish her. She does not cling to relationships that drain her or tolerate treatment that demeans her because she knows she is a daughter of the King. She is willing to walk alone rather than compromise her standards. She is willing to wait rather than settle. She is willing to release rather than grasp. She is not defined by her relationship status, her bank account, her job title, or her achievements. She is defined by the unchanging truth that she is God's beloved. Because of that, she is not intimidated by other people's success. She celebrates it because she knows there is room for everyone in God's plan. She is not threatened by other women's gifts because she understands that comparison is the thief of joy and the destroyer of sisterhood. She is secure enough to cheer for others without feeling smaller herself. When she faces rejection or criticism, she does not spiral into self-doubt. She may feel the sting of disappointment, but she does not let it rewrite her worth. She turns to God and asks him to remind her who she is. She listens for his voice above all others. In that place of intimacy, she remembers that no person's opinion can override God's declaration over her life. She remembers that her worth was established long before she ever had anything to prove. She moves through the world with grace because she is not striving for acceptance. She already has it. She is not performing for love. She already knows she is loved. She does not hustle for significance. She already has significance. This freedom gives her the capacity to be present, to be authentic, to be wholehearted. She does not wear a mask to fit in. She does not pretend to be less than she is. She does not diminish her dreams to make others feel better about themselves. She simply shows up as the woman God created her to be, anchored in truth, filled with purpose and covered in grace. When she faces seasons of uncertainty, she does not unravel because her identity is not tied to circumstances. She may wrestle with doubt, but she returns again and again to the foundation of her faith. She knows that God's plans for her are good and that he is faithful even when she cannot see the way forward. This trust gives her the courage to keep moving, to keep believing, to keep standing firm. She is not perfect, but she is anchored. She is not without struggle, but she is secure. She is not without flaws, but she is filled with a worth that cannot be diminished. And because of this, she never has to prove herself to anyone. She never has to beg for respect that God already gave her. She never has to convince the world that she matters. She knows she does. She sets standards and boundaries that reflect her faith and self-respect because she understands that her life is a reflection of what she believes about herself and what she believes about God. She does not allow others to dictate how she should be treated because she knows that when you permit disrespect, you teach people that it is acceptable. She has learned that boundaries are not walls to keep love out, but gates to protect what is sacred within. Her standards are not unrealistic demands, but clear declarations of the value she holds for her time, her energy, her heart, and her spirit. She is willing to stand alone in her convictions rather than compromise them for the sake of fitting in or avoiding conflict. This kind of woman has spent time examining what she truly believes about her worth, and she has surrendered her identity to God rather than the ever-shifting opinions of the world. She has prayed for discernment to recognize when someone is draining her or dishonoring her, and she has asked for courage to speak up when necessary. She knows that setting boundaries is not selfish, it is stewardship. It is a way of honoring the life God has entrusted to her, the calling he has placed in her hands, and the heart he has given her to protect. People often assume that a kind woman should be endlessly available, agreeable, and accommodating, but she has learned that kindness and passivity are not the same. She can be gracious without becoming a doormat. She can be compassionate without being manipulated. She can be generous without enabling disrespect. Because her standards are rooted in her faith, she does not feel guilty for requiring honor in her relationships. She does not apologize for expecting integrity, consistency, and mutual respect. She knows that the God she serves is not a God of chaos, but a God of order and truth, and so she strives to bring those same qualities into every interaction. When someone crosses her boundaries, she does not explode in anger or retreat into silence. She speaks the truth with love, but she also stands firm. She has learned that boundaries are not threats or ultimatums. They are simply statements of what she will and will not allow. She does not need to convince anyone to respect them. She only needs to enforce them consistently. This is how she teaches people how to treat her, not with resentment or hostility, but with quiet strength. Her standards extend to every area of her life. In her friendships, she chooses people who encourage her faith, challenge her to grow, and honor her convictions. She refuses to entertain gossip, negativity, or competition disguised as companionship. She understands that her environment shapes her spirit, so she is intentional about the company she keeps. In her work, she brings excellence because she believes her efforts are an offering to God, but she also draws a line where her well-being is concerned. She knows when to rest, when to say no, and when to step away from what is not aligned with her purpose. In romantic relationships, she does not settle for crumbs of affection or inconsistent commitment. She knows that love is patient and kind, but it is also clear and intentional. She does not allow herself to be strung along by promises that never turn into action. She does not compromise her values to avoid being alone. Her faith has taught her that being single with peace is far better than being connected with someone who cannot honor her spirit. She has learned to trust God's timing rather than force connections that drain her. She understands that setting standards will sometimes cost her relationships, but she also knows that what is truly meant for her will not require her to abandon herself. She does not cling to people who cannot walk beside her in integrity. She does not lower her expectations to accommodate someone else's lack of growth. Instead, she continues to stand in the truth that she is worthy of real love, real respect, and real partnership. When it comes to her time, she is deliberate and discerning. She does not overcommit herself out of obligation or fear of disappointing others. She knows that every yes requires a no somewhere else, so she makes her decisions prayerfully. She is willing to disappoint people in order to stay faithful to what God has called her to do. She understands that busyness does not equal significance and that rest is an act of trust. She has learned to embrace the quiet spaces where she can reconnect with her spirit and be reminded of what matters most. Her boundaries also protect her mind. She is selective about what she consumes, what she reads, what she watches, what she listens to. She knows that her thoughts shape her beliefs and her beliefs shape her actions. She does not allow toxic narratives to take root in her heart. She fills her mind with truth, with scripture, with messages that reinforce her identity as a beloved daughter. She has learned that she cannot control every influence around her, but she can choose which one she will welcome into her life. She is not intimidated by those who question her standards or try to guilt her into compromising them. She has spent too many nights wrestling with insecurity and too many mornings waking up with regret to go back to that place. She has learned that peace is more valuable than approval, and that clarity is more powerful than consensus. She is no longer willing to negotiate her boundaries for the sake of keeping superficial harmony. When she enforces her boundaries, she does so calmly and consistently, though she does not need to defend them with elaborate explanations or emotional outbursts. She simply lives them. And over time, people learn that she is not someone who can be swayed by pressure or flattery. She is anchored in something deeper. Her standards are not arbitrary preferences. They are extensions of her faith and her respect for the life God has given her. This way of living has not come easily. She has had to unlearn the patterns of people pleasing and the fear of rejection. She has had to heal from past experiences where she allowed others to cross lines that should have never been blurred. She has had to practice self-compassion as she grew stronger. But every time she chose to honor her standards, she became more rooted in her worth. People sometimes wonder why she seems so steady, so unwavering. It is because she has done the inner work to align her life with her convictions. She has learned that setting boundaries is not about controlling others, but about taking responsibility for herself. She does not need to micromanage anyone else's behavior. She only needs to stay faithful to her own. In every season, she trusts that God will guide her, that He will protect her, that He will bring the right people and remove the wrong ones. This trust empowers her to keep her standards high, not as a form of pride, but as an act of reverence. She knows that she is the gatekeeper of her own heart and that it is her responsibility to steward it well. So she moves through life with clarity and grace. She is approachable, but not accessible to everyone. She is compassionate, but not compromising. She is loving, but not permissive. Her boundaries are the evidence of her self-respect, and her standards are the reflection of her faith. She has learned that when you honor yourself, you also honor the one who made you. And that is why she never feels the need to apologize for the way she protects her spirit. Her confidence comes from her purpose, not from others' validation, because she has discovered that nothing external can satisfy the deepest questions of her heart. She has come to understand that applause is fleeting, opinions are unreliable, and approval is often conditional. She has watched how easily admiration can turn into envy, how quickly support can dissolve when she no longer fits someone's expectation. She has seen firsthand that the praise of others is a shifting foundation, and she refuses to build her identity on something so unstable. Instead, she has chosen to anchor herself in the unwavering truth that God has given her a purpose no one else can fulfill. That purpose is the source of her strength, her resolve, and her quiet confidence. She wakes up each day with a sense of direction that transcends her circumstances. Even when life is uncertain or people misunderstand her intentions, she holds fast to the conviction that she is here for a reason. Her purpose is not a title or a job description. It is a calling woven into the very fabric of who she is. It shows up in the way she encourages others, the way she carries herself with dignity, the way she refuses to settle for mediocrity. She does not measure her impact by how many people approve of her decisions. She measures it by her faithfulness to the mission God has placed in her hands. This clarity gives her a steady kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't need to be announced or flaunted. It simply exists. It is the unspoken assurance that she is doing what she was created to do, and that is enough. When people question her path or belittle her dreams, she does not crumble under their scrutiny. She has learned to listen to feedback without allowing it to redefine her. She has learned to be open to growth without becoming desperate for affirmation. Because she knows that her worth is not up for debate, she can keep her heart open and her spirit soft, even in a world that is quick to criticize. When she achieves something meaningful, she celebrates it fully, but she does not let it become her entire identity. She knows that success is not what makes her valuable. She was valuable before she ever accomplished a single thing. She was worthy before she ever proved herself to anyone. Her purpose is not about performing for acceptance, but about expressing the gift she has been given. Every time she steps into that purpose, whether it's through her work, her relationships, her acts of service, she feels the deep satisfaction that comes from alignment. She feels the peace that can never be replicated by chasing validation. Because her confidence is purpose-driven, it doesn't evaporate when she faces setbacks. She understands that failure is not a verdict on her worth, but simply part of the journey. When she falls short of her goals, she does not spiral into shame or self-loathing. She reflects, she learns, and she gets back up. She does this because she knows that her calling is bigger than any temporary disappointment. She doesn't need to be perfect to be effective. She doesn't need to have it all together to make a difference. She simply needs to keep showing up with faith and integrity. There was a time in her life when she did rely on validation to feel secure. She remembers the exhaustion of trying to please everyone, the anxiety of wondering if she was enough. She remembers the hollow feeling that came when she met other people's expectations but lost touch with her own. It took time, prayer, and soul-deep honesty to recognize that this was not the life God intended for her. He didn't create her to be a reflection of other people's desires. He created her to reflect his love, his truth, and his unique purpose through her. This revelation changed everything. She began to release the need for constant reassurance. She stopped performing for acceptance and started living for meaning. She stopped chasing approval and started seeking alignment. She traded the burden of people pleasing for the freedom of purpose. And in doing so, she found a confidence that no one could take away. Her confidence is visible in the way she carries herself. She walks with her head held high, not because she thinks she is better than anyone else, but because she knows she is not less. She speaks with conviction because she believes in what she has to say. She listens with humility because she knows she doesn't have all the answers. She shows up consistently, even when recognition is nowhere to be found. She is not motivated by applause, but by the quiet assurance that she is exactly where she is meant to be. People often wonder how she stays so steady in a world that is obsessed with comparison. They wonder how she keeps moving forward when the opinions of others grow loud and critical. But she has learned that purpose is a compass that always points her back to her true north. When she feels tempted to measure her worth against someone else's highlight reel, she reminds herself that her calling is unique. No one else can walk her path, and she cannot walk theirs. She lets go of the pressure to compete because she knows that her race is hers alone. Her purpose gives her the courage to make choices that others might not understand. She is willing to disappoint people rather than betray herself. She is willing to stand alone in her convictions rather than blend into the crowd. She is willing to take risks and face criticism because she knows that living authentically is more important than being liked. This is not arrogance. It is integrity. It is the quiet strength that comes from knowing she is accountable to God first and foremost. She also understands that purpose is not a destination, but a way of being. It is not reserved for the mountaintop moments of success. It is woven into the ordinary rhythms of her life. It shows up when she treats a stranger with kindness, when she mentors someone who needs encouragement, when she forgives instead of holding a grudge. Every small act of love and faithfulness is part of the bigger picture. She finds joy in this, knowing that she does not have to do something grand to make her life meaningful. She simply has to be obedient to what God has placed in her heart. Her confidence is also evident in her willingness to grow. She knows that having purpose doesn't mean she has it all figured out. She remains teachable because she believes that God is always refining her character. She is not threatened by constructive feedback because she does not see it as an attack on her worth. She sees it as an opportunity to become more of who she is called to be. This humility, paired with her sense of purpose, creates a resilience that carries her through every season. Even when she feels unseen or unappreciated, she does not waver in her commitment. She knows that God sees what no one else does. He sees the quiet sacrifices, the hidden faithfulness, the moments when she chooses integrity over recognition. She draws strength from the truth that her labor is never in vain when it is done with love. This belief sustains her, reminding her that her significance does not depend on human acknowledgement. So she keeps showing up. She keeps using her gift. She keeps living with intention. Her purpose is her anchor, and from that anchor comes a confidence that no praise or criticism can touch. She knows that she is enough not because others have told her so, but because God has declared it over her life. And that is more than enough reason to keep going. When she walks with God, presence commands respect without a single word, because there is something about a woman who knows where her strength comes from that cannot be ignored. She does not need to announce her worth or demand recognition because it radiates from the quiet way she carries herself. She stands anchored in a confidence that is not loud or showy, but unmistakable. This confidence is born from her deep and abiding trust that God is with her, guiding her every step, shaping her character, and fortifying her spirit. She has learned that true authority is not measured by the volume of her voice, but by the depth of her faith. There is a steadiness in her that draws people's attention, not because she is trying to impress them, but because she is so completely at peace with who she is. She has walked through seasons of uncertainty and pain and come out stronger, her trust in God refined and unshakable. Every scar has become a testimony, every hardship an opportunity to lean more fully into grace. So when she enters a room, she does so with a quiet assurance that she lacks nothing. She is not threatened by others' success or intimidated by their opinions because she is rooted in something eternal. Her eyes reflect compassion and wisdom because she has spent time in prayer and surrender. She has sat in the presence of the one who calls her beloved, and it shows in the gentleness with which she treats others. Her words carry weight not because she forces them to, but because she speaks from a place of integrity. She is not interested in gossip or shallow conversation. Her heart yearns for what is real and true. People sense this, even if they can't fully articulate why they feel so drawn to her. There is an authenticity about her that cannot be faked. She does not measure herself against others or seek to elevate herself above them. She knows that respect is not something you grab from the world, but something you cultivate within. When her soul is aligned with God's will, her spirit naturally commands honor because she embodies the love and courage that so many long to find in themselves. She does not have to insist that people take her seriously. They simply do because they see that she is unwavering in her values. In moments of conflict or challenge, she does not resort to manipulation or anger to get her way. Instead, she remains calm, trusting that God is her defender. Her composure under pressure is often what leaves the deepest impression. While others might shout or scramble to prove themselves right, she has learned to be still and let God fight her battles. This stillness is not passivity. It is strength restrained by wisdom. It is the confidence of a woman who knows that nothing and no one can strip away what God has given her. Her respect for herself is a mirror of her reverence for the one who created her. She understands that she was made in the image of God, and that knowledge has set her free from the need to perform for approval. She does not accept treatment that falls below the standard of love, kindness, and integrity. She sets boundaries without apology because she knows her heart is sacred ground. When people test those boundaries, they quickly realize that she will not compromise her values for acceptance or convenience. People often find themselves reconsidering their own behavior in her presence. They sense that she will not entertain dishonesty or mediocrity, so they are inspired to bring their best selves forward. Without uttering a word, she challenges others to rise higher, to live with more purpose and intention. She is a reminder that true respect is earned not through force, but through example. Her life testifies to the power of walking closely with God, of allowing his character to transform her from the inside out. Even those who do not share her faith feel the impact of her integrity. They may not understand the source of her composure or the conviction behind her decisions, but they cannot deny that it is real. They see how she treats people with dignity regardless of status. They notice how she shows up consistently even when no one is watching. They recognize that she does not sway with every new trend or popular opinion because she is anchored in something unchanging. Her respect is not a performance. It is a byproduct of a life surrendered. She does not need to dress a certain way or adopt a certain tone to be taken seriously. Her authenticity speaks for itself. She does not rely on titles or accolades to validate her worth because she knows that true authority comes from walking in alignment with God's purpose. She trusts that he will open the doors that are meant for her and close the ones that are not. This trust allows her to move through life with an ease that is both rare and magnetic. When she offers encouragement, it feels sincere because it is. She has no hidden agenda, no desire to manipulate others for her own gain. Her kindness is an overflow of the love she has received from God. She has been forgiven much, so she extends grace freely. She has been lifted out of darkness, so she brings light wherever she goes. This is why people feel safe in her presence. They sense that she will not betray their confidence or diminish their worth. She knows that respect is not something she can demand, but something she cultivates by how she lives. She does not need to correct every misconception about her or prove every accusation false. She understands that time reveals truth and God is always her vindicator. This patience is powerful because it is so uncommon. In a world that demands instant gratification, she has learned to trust the slow work of God. She has learned that her worth is not on trial every time someone misunderstands her. When she prays, she does so with the confidence of a daughter who knows she is heard. She brings her worries, her hopes, and her disappointments to God without fear of rejection. This intimacy fuels her resilience. It gives her the courage to face each day with a heart open to possibility. She does not harden herself to avoid pain, but she does guard her spirit so that bitterness cannot take root. Her presence commands respect because it is so evident that she is not living for herself alone. She is driven by a desire to honor God in all she does, and this makes her life compelling. Even when she stumbles or falls short, she owns her mistakes and seeks growth. Her humility is not weakness. It is the soil where her strength takes root. She is not ashamed to admit her need for grace because she knows that acknowledging her dependence on God is the truest form of freedom. People may not always agree with her choices, but they cannot deny her sincerity. They see that she is the same person in private as she is in public. She does not put on a mask to be accepted. She does not shrink herself to avoid criticism. She does not puff herself up to earn admiration. She simply shows up day after day as a woman committed to walking closely with God. This commitment is what makes her presence so powerful. It is not her charisma or her eloquence that commands respect, but her authenticity. She embodies the peace and strength that come from living a life surrendered to something greater than herself. And because of this, she does not have to say much to make an impact. Her life speaks for her. Her faith speaks through her. Her quiet confidence leaves an imprint long after she has left the room. In the end, a woman who walks with God doesn't have to demand respect because her life itself commands it. She doesn't rely on validation from others to feel worthy or strong. Her confidence flows from her purpose. Her standards are anchored in faith, and her boundaries reflect her self-respect. She shows up with quiet conviction, not to prove herself, but to honor the one who created her. People sense the difference because her presence carries a calm authority and unshakable integrity and a love that has been refined by grace. She is steady, authentic, and whole, and without uttering a single word, she reminds everyone she meets that true respect is never begged for. It is inspired by a life fully surrendered to God.